Sheldon here with ESI, and today's video is going to be about SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. It's basically a way of communicating with a database. Now, before we get started, we should probably talk a little bit about what a database is. If you're familiar with Microsoft Excel, you can think of the Excel workbook as a database and the sheets within it as tables, and the rows within the sheets as records made up of columns, which we would think of as fields. I'll give you another example. So here we have the XYZ database, and it contains a customers table. It also contains an invoices table and a parts table. These are all names that we can make up and you can give the different tables and the database. And here we're looking at some records from, let's say, the customer table. We have 5 records, and what we're seeing here is 6 or 7 fields. We have the business entity ID field, person type field, etc., etc. So first, in our first name field, we have Ken, Terry, Roberto, Rob, and Gail. So each row is a record, and each column, it represents a field. So once again, we have the entire database. It will contain tables, and tables will contain records. Now, table or databases can contain much more than just tables. They can contain views and stored procedures, but that's beyond the scope of this particular video. So I'm now currently inside the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, and what we can see is we have various items underneath our SQL Server instance, and one of those items are databases. If I hit the plus sign, these are all databases within our server. And I had downloaded this Test Adventure Works 2012 database. Let's go ahead and open that. And you can see within the database, we have several other items. All we're worried about right now are the tables within this database. So if I hit the plus sign, it's going to show me all the tables, and there are a slew of them. If I pick a particular table, right click, tell to edit the top 200 rows, you'll see where it gives us some information here, and you can see all the different fields running across the top. So we have a business entity ID field, person type field, all the way to modified date field. So now let's go ahead and make our first query. So we're going to click on the New Query tab up here, and I'll explain this as we go. So the first word I'm going to put in our query sentence is select. This means I want to display some fields from the records. And the first field I'm going to want is first name. Now, this is underlined in red text because it thinks it's an invalid column name. It thinks it's invalid because it doesn't know which table I'm pulling information from yet. I'll show you in a second how to tell it. Right now, just realize we are utilizing the person.person table. Next field I want is middle name, and then the next is last name. And now I'm going to tell it I want this from the person.person table. And now once I've done that, it just automatically looked and confirmed that the field names were proper. Now you would get this information by looking at, opening up a table and looking at the fields and deciding, oh, this is what I want. Let's look at title. If I want to add title, maybe I'll put it up front here. So I put in my fields and I separate them by a comma. When I'm done with the last field, no more commas. And I put the next keyword from. Another note is I made these all capitalized. It doesn't happen automatically. I just did that for readability's sake. Now I can come up to this execute button, click it, and we'll see now it has returned a bunch of rows. Over in the right hand corner here, we see there are a total of 19,972 rows. So let's talk a minute about a couple of the things returned, such as null. Okay, null means there's no information. Imagine I asked you to look in a blue bucket, and you opened the blue bucket, and there was nothing in there. That is not the same as null. If I asked you to look in a blue bucket, and there was no blue bucket, now you've got null. Otherwise, you would tell me, oh, the blue bucket's empty. So if you said, hey, it's null, I'm going to know what you're saying is there's no blue bucket. So that is our first SQL statement. All we did was display 4 different fields from the person.person table. Let's say I want to change this to person.password. These lines should show up as red because those fields don't exist in the person.password table. And if I try and run this, I'm going to get an error because I am trying to pull something out of a table that doesn't exist. Once again, set it to the right table and everything works fine. That's it for this video. Just wanted to expose you to the SQL Server Management Studio and give you just a very simple query statement and kind of explain what a database is. Thanks for watching.